Good afternoon and welcome to PincusCo Live, the weekly New York City commercial real estate broadcast. Thank you for joining us for our 7th episode. Prior episodes are on our YouTube channel and via podcast. Today we're speaking with Craig Deitelzweig, CEO of Marx Realty, a commercial landlord with 67 properties nationally, including 19 in New York City. Craig joined the firm in 2017 and is responsible for repositioning the existing portfolio as well as expanding it with a focus on value-add office investments in 3 core markets, New York City, Washington, D.C., and Atlanta. I'm Adam Pincus, founder of the 3-year-old news and data publishing company PincusCo Media. We distribute newsletters on transactions and new development, which are populated using our proprietary data. And last week, we launched a new product website. You can see the link below. This episode is sponsored by Gparency, which is a provider of technology solutions designed to empower commercial property owners and reduce their reliance on certain high-cost service providers. I'd like to tell our viewers we're going to start, and we're going to split this into 2 segments. In the first half, we'll discuss Marx Realty's efforts to buy office buildings in Manhattan. And in the second half, we're going to focus on how the firm is seeking to entice office workers back into office buildings in Manhattan. So Craig, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
I want to start with you all are on the hunt for office properties in Midtown South. Can you first explain what are the kinds of office properties you have now in the city, and why do you want to grow that portfolio?
Sure. So we have our office properties in the city are 10 Grand Central, 545 Madison, 430 Park Avenue, 135 Bowery, 161 Bowery, and 201 East 57th Street. All these properties either have or are about to be repositioned. We believe very strongly in New York office. We believe that hospitality infused office in particular, which is very amenity rich, has a real resonance for today's tenants more than ever before. And if you're able to do that successfully, you'll have really great returns. And we have sort of a secret sauce that we'd like to do on more properties throughout the city.
And talking about that portfolio, what are the ranges of sizes of the buildings?
The Bowery properties are fairly small, so they're about 70,000 square feet, and then 10 Grand Central is about 460,000 square feet. And we don't really have a sweet spot. We would really look for any asset that makes sense, and that so long as the asset has the bones and the great light and air that's necessary to reposition it properly. But we do find that we'd rather buy something big because it's sometimes, usually, just as much work to reposition a large asset as a small asset.
And what's the market like right now? Like what are you seeing out there?
So at the moment, we're not seeing much that we like. You know, we look for value add office. So we would do some core plus, but we really prefer value add. And right now, you know, we're not seeing the amount of value add that we'd like to see and expect to see throughout the remainder of the year. Some of the properties we looked at and bid on were 360 Park Avenue South. That was really the last one that we liked a lot. And I'm told we were the number 2 bidder. And we just were close on that one. We like that one, which is in Midtown South, because it has all the bones that you would like in an office building. It has to be rethought, and we thought it could really be rethought in a great way. We prefer Midtown and Midtown South, but we'd also look downtown. But we really have trouble in the financial district just because of the light and air issues that we see there. But in Midtown, we think there's real opportunity here because of the transportational access, you know, between Grand Central and Long Island Railroad coming into Grand Central, and the Plaza District is, you know, our property there is on fire. So we just really like what we're seeing, and we like the activity we're seeing. We're seeing tenants from all over the world really wanting to open up in New York. So we want to be part of that.
And why do you think there might be more opportunity down the line and in the rest of the year?
So if you're a commodity office building and most of the office buildings in New York are, I think you're in trouble. Tenants today really want space that's very dynamic and exciting and have all these amenities and is modern. So if you're a building that has leases coming due and you haven't repositioned your asset and you have to put a lot of capital in, A, you might not have that capital, and B, you might have trouble refinancing today. And then C, you might just not have the ability to rethink an asset and really reformulate it in a way that works for today's tenants. So we actually have been receiving calls from certain owners about partnering with them on assets. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. And then as tenants come back to the office, and they might not be coming back to some of these buildings that are not exciting for tenants to come back to. And what we're finding is today, much more so than pre-COVID, it's all about retaining and attracting talent and getting them into the office. And these employers want their tenants, their employees rather, to be very excited about coming back to work. So they want to come back to work to spaces that are beautiful, and make those tenants excited. And so that's what we do. And that's why we think that opportunities will arise shortly.
What's the universe? Like, we did a count of the buildings between 25,000 and up, and in Midtown and the areas, not in the Midtown South area, and it looked like it was about 1,700 properties. But I think there's probably a lot. I mean, some of that was far east side, west side.
Right.
What's your universe? Do you think there's like 1,000 potential properties to look at?
I mean, to look at, yes, but to actually that we would buy, probably much slimmer than that, probably 10% of that. Because what's happening is so many of those assets really don't have the ability to be reimagined. They're just not great. They're just vanilla. And there's vanilla that you could rethink of, and we're pretty creative people to reimagine it. But there are some where you just realize this building is just past its useful life. We also
can you give an example of like what's just like a hard stop, which is not going to work for you guys?
Yeah, so it's actually, believe it or not, easier for us to re-envision a property that has some age to it, some patina and heritage, because we do think tenants understand if something's authentic versus not authentic. And so if you try to just create something that seems cool out of something that's not, it just won't work. So, the glass and steel buildings are tricky. Like even 545 Madison, which we own, when we reimagined it, it was hard to do just because giving a building a soul that was, kind of lackluster before is a very tricky thing. But if it has all the ceiling heights and the column spans and all of that and views and location, then you're able to. But there are some buildings that you just look at and it doesn't have a prayer, and it could. And I think today, the difference also is today's tenants are much pickier than they've ever been, because it's about exciting their employees to get back to the office. So it's not like, will this work? It's like they want everything to be perfect. And there are some things that you can sort of, fix, you can sort of get over, you can, through architecture or design, you can sort of, make it work. But there are other things that you're just like, this building's a dog and you can't do anything about it. So unfortunately, a lot of the buildings that have come onto the market have been those. And even those buildings haven't really been repriced the way that they should be if it's going to make sense in the amount of capital that you have to put into the building to reimagine it. Like some of them just don't have the ability to have outdoor space. So you would have to, make your own, insert loggias, which are very expensive to do. And if you're going to do something like that, you need to be able to buy it at a good basis.
And from the physical side of the building, like, can you explain what are these no-goes? Is it just ceiling height, like they're just too low, or it's just a building in between two buildings with no?
Yeah. So it's a lot of it is just sort of, it has, one wall of windows only, or the windows are small and you really don't have the ability to make them bigger windows, or it could be, the column spacing is just a mess and you can't really design around it. It could be that the lobby space is just too small and it won't make the building feel important enough, and you can't get back the retail space. Usually that's what happens. They slice it off and it's just too small. Things like that. And sometimes there's just nothing exciting about it. You just can't see it being an exciting building. And I'm sure you've been in some of these buildings that just sort of, has no purpose. And we really want our buildings to be once it's repositioned to be, either trophy or trophy light is what we call it. Mm-hmm. So it just has everything that you would want today, but the rents are slightly lower than the true, brand new trophy property.
And from the purchase side, do you have a minimum size building that you would buy? From an office perspective, not retail.
Yeah, so I would say, somewhere it's going to be a really wide range. Our range would be from like 100 million to 2 billion. So it's a broad range. And if it's 100 million, it would have to be just a special boutique-y type building that just really speaks to us. And we know we can get the kind of traction that we can on a building like that. So we do like boutique-y buildings, especially ones that have a history to it. And you could really just, and crazy ceiling heights and all of that, you could really make it very special.
And how many of those come on a year? Like how many buildings have you been like, we should have gotten that, like the 360 Park South?
Not many, like 1 or 2 a year. That's pretty much it. And there are some that we do really like a lot, but they're just not priced right. And it's hard to make it make sense. Also, certain buildings, if you're assuming, $100 a square foot on a base of a building, and some of these buildings you have to price it like that, it's hard to make that work today. Unless those bottom floors, are, at 360 Park Avenue South, that have the ceiling heights and windows and arch windows and all that kind of experience that tenants really like. So it could work, but even then it's tricky to get those kind of rents. So I think there has to be a sort of a place in the market, and we believe we're going to see it, where the pricing meets what the building really is and the amount of capital you have to put into it. And also the financing market has changed as well. So you have to put that in the equation too.
You think that there are going to be owners that are squeezed because of the rising interest rates and essentially that, or kind of the relative decline in demand for space?
I think if they have a loan that's coming up and they're over levered, they're not going to get those same kind of rates or amount of leverage. I think 545 Madison, which we own, is a good example of that. So, it was repositioned by Elcor 8 years ago. They sold it to Sit, put about 90% debt on it. They needed all the spaces in the building to be at least $100 a square foot. They were only able to get rents in the 60s and 70s a square foot. And we evicted them and took it back and really, reimagined that building. And now we are getting rents like that, but you have to be able to put the capital into it in order to make that happen. And we could talk about that later, but, and that's the kind of building that we would love to buy today. It has really great views. It's a great location. The Plaza District has really high demand. And it's also a boutique size that happens to be the size that a lot of the private equity firms like to fit into. So it meets a lot of the equation that's necessary.
Are you guys looking for debt? Are you trying to buy mezz or loans or anything? None of that?
No, it's not really our expertise. So we're not doing that. We would, if a lender reaches out to us for help when they take back a property, we would be glad to do that. We also are looking at hotel properties to convert those to office. So we came very close to one of those deals with a lender, and then the lender decided to give their borrower some more time. So we'll see if that happens. But that one was, a great asset in Bryant Park. It was an office building that was converted to hotel, had a bunch of terraces and high ceilings. It was just, a wonderful asset, and we'd love to own that one.
That's interesting. I mean, do you see more of that coming down? Obviously, hotels had sort of their really rough moment, and maybe they're going to stabilize.
We'll see. I think it depends on the hotel segment. Some of the travel sector, leisure travel, those are doing better, but the ones that are really reliant on
Business.
business and conventions, those are still having trouble. And a lot of those hotels were originally office buildings too. And what we like about the conversion of hotel to office is that it already has a lot of the amenities that we would put into a building. It has to be freshened up, but it has all that infrastructure in place. And also when we were designing a hotel to office, we were actually going to do a lot of individual bathrooms throughout the space instead of the large bathrooms that you see today. There would be many little ones throughout the space, which actually works in the land of COVID, where people want their sort of health and privacy in their small little bathroom, that kind of thing. So we think it could really work very nicely.
What do you think the universe for that is? Like, do you think there's like 50 or 60 or 100? Because none of the new hotels, I assume none of those would work for you, built in the past like 20 years. Wouldn't be those, would it?
Yeah, I mean, one of them was, yes. Because there's a lot of similarities to what works for a hotel layout and an office layout. Just a nice rectangle, the amount of depth, the amount of window line, a lot of that does actually work, and a lot of the infrastructure is already in place too. So the tricky thing there is the unions. Really, we were focusing on more non-union buildings, non-union hotel buildings. So that universe is much smaller.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'd like to turn now and look at how you are creating your style. And you guys were sort of early on the idea of the hotel type experience. Can you talk about why you even wanted to move in that direction instead of the glass and steel and marble way to attract tenants?
Sure. So we think the world has changed, and folks really want space that's very warm and inviting, and is sort of the antithesis of that corporate white marble, mausoleum that was so common and really has been so common since the 1960s. And we really, our goal is to really embrace hospitality and make the office experience as much like a hotel as possible. The ways that we do that is we, as you approach a building, we, like 10 Grand Central, we have a brass marquee with brass fins. We have a doorman outside in a hotel uniform. We have oversized wood doors. We have music playing that's curated to the office experience. We have a signature scent when you come inside. We have seating areas and fruit infused water. Our goal is really for it to feel very, very welcoming and almost tranquil. You come through Grand Central, which is just so much, chaos under normal times. And we want someplace where people can go and they immediately can take a deep breath, and it's not just the lobby experience. It happens on our club floor too. And our club floors have lounges and cafes and boardrooms and terraces. We now have gelato that we offer. We have a bar cart that comes out at night. And really what employers want is they want their employees to be in the office as much as possible. And we help them make that possible. So, by offering that bar cart, they're going to stay late and they're going to hang out with their colleagues. And there's real value in that, in helping to create their culture and their brand. And when we first did this, we weren't sure, or at least brokers were telling us, we're not going to attract a good portion of the market. Those conservative, the law firms, the accounting firms, the insurance companies. And what we found was actually the complete opposite. All those groups really want to be cool. And they want space that's cool. And they still, like everyone else, really want to attract talent. And the way that they do that is by incorporating their brand with our building's brand. And we help them to do that. And the way that we know that it's successful and it's resonating is that many of these tenants will actually say in their lease comments, we want that bar cart, and we want Tito's. And we want, whatever else that they want. They'll put that actually in their clauses, which makes us laugh. But it really speaks to how important that really is. And then, there's lots of events that are happening on our club floor. And it's really a whole way of thinking of the office class. And we think it's actually a whole new segment. It's a whole new sector, similar to like there's a sector for lab space, there's a sector for hospitality infused office. And when, our broker will say, this 7,000 square foot group has 60 options when you do a CoStar search. But there really aren't, because when you really look at the type of spaces that are differentiated and special and hospitality infused, we think there's one option, but, perhaps there's 5. It's a very small universe of real options, and these tenants are willing to pay a premium to be in buildings that offer these type of hospitality infused space.
Aren't we seeing Tishman and RXR and some of the big firms create amenity style, like seeing what you guys have been doing, but seeing what it's just sort of post-COVID, just a logical thing. We've got to bring it back somehow.
Sure.
Is the competition growing?
Well, yes, that they're trying to replicate, and I'm not being like, I don't mean to be rude here, but what will happen is, they'll have some elements of it. So they'll have a lounge that looks cool, but then the lobby doesn't look cool, or the bathrooms don't look cool. It's like, it has to be a whole holistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
And, we still haven't seen, I know now Tishman's trying to have doormen outside some of their buildings, but it's still a different type of experience, where our doormen like literally know everyone in the building, and, they're really an amenity of the building. And I think, and, when we don't have those turnstiles that you'll have at those other buildings because it's hostile, like we really want it to be a very welcoming environment that, we have the security, but we do it in a different way that's a little bit more subtle. It's through our app and the Bluetooth, and, the doormen actually do know you, and we have doormen and concierge and, access to the elevators by your app. So there's different ways to handle it. And it's also just, even how we deal with the tenants is different, like we're in the service industry, and, and we've been saying it for a long time, like, we're not the big bad landlord. We want to help them and, and make their company more successful. And I think that that's a really hard thing to do. And I also think it's really into the details, so a tenant can tell if something is inauthentic, so if something feels fake.
If I could ask about like the details,
Sure.
Like a lot of this, obviously people could spend like a ton of money and make it like really, really fun, but how are you making it pencil out?
Sure. So interestingly, by not doing the white marble and doing walnut wood instead, let's say, you actually save money. The walnut wood is cheaper than the marble. And during the supply side issue times, it's more readily available, and time equals money as well. So we can actually make it work where we're not spending more money, but it feels like it's more expensive and it feels like a better experience. So it actually pencils out quite easily. And then what we're seeing in terms of the rents, to give you an example, like at 10 Grand Central on our lower floors, we just got 2 floors back. The rents were in the 30s, which is insane. And, yeah. And now we just did a deal there for 67, and, we think the next one will be in the 70s. So if we hadn't done this type of hospitality infused experience, maybe we would have gotten rents in the 50s. But we wouldn't be getting rents in the 60s and 70s. And, upstairs, higher up in the building, we're triple digit. So, that wouldn't happen if we hadn't done this. So I think the returns are, it's a no brainer. And I actually think if you don't do it, you're not leasing. So it's not even like, what is your, it's a hard thing to say, what are your returns? Because when you're saying what it would have been before, I actually think it's like you're stagnant. You'll have, no demand for your product, and you're only competing on price, which is a very bad place to be. And I also don't think you need, 40,000 square feet of amenities to make it resonate. Tenants actually feel like that's a little wasteful, and they get concerned it's going to be in their OpEx. So you have to be sort of mindful of, what will they really use, how they will use it, and really what the experience is on their tour, and how they can see themselves in the building.
With the amenity space, again, it was sort of the concept of a hypothetical 20-story building, and you're taking one floor for amenity space. So then you're losing rent on that floor, and you're getting it back through the higher rents. Does it work that way? How do you calculate it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're giving up that space. So you want to make sure that you're getting it through the rent from all the other tenants. And, often on all of our amenity spaces, we have terraces too. So not only are you giving up, that space, you're giving up like great space.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to really work for everyone else in the building. At 10 Grand Central, we actually have more terraces than floors. So it's not like that terrace is that valuable because we have so many of them. But, at 545, we're waiting until we actually get a space back that has a good terrace that we can use for it. So we're starting that Leonard Lounge space in June, waiting for that tenant to leave so that we can make that space available to the whole building. And you will get, at least $10 a square foot more by doing that, so it's very real. It's very worthwhile to do. But again, it's not just that amenity space, it's really the entirety of the building. And it starts from the moment you approach the building all the way to the spaces upstairs. And we find that tenants ask us to build out the space for them, and we can build it out cheaper than they could themselves, because we have our in-house construction team. We actually will buy a lot of the materials in advance. So lots of the lighting, lots of the wall coverings, carpets, all that kind of stuff. We'll buy it in advance, buy it in bulk, and we'll get discounts that way. So there are some savings to be had by doing this, by making space beautiful, and then the tenants wanting to replicate it really helps.
Are there certain types of tenants that are in the market now? Are you seeing it skew in any kind of way toward a more creative or less creative, or just?
No, it really depends on the location of the building. Like 545 Madison is 100% private equity firms.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, these firms are coming from, we're seeing tenants coming from Westchester, from Connecticut, from London, from Paris. I mean, from really all over the world now, and they all want to be in this area, and they all, they'll tour, call it 10 buildings, and all of those buildings look almost identical. And now a lot of them actually do have amenity floors too, but the rest of the building is the white marble, So, and I would say when the tenants come into that building, they get excited. They'll actually say, wow, and if you can have a tenant saying, wow, and they're thinking our employees are going to love this, you're going to get those tenants. And what we're also seeing now is tenants, I've never seen anything like it before, but they'll come 4 times, and each time they come, they'll bring, the first time it'll be 2 people, the next time it's like 15 people, next time it's another 15 people. So they want their whole organization to really love the space. I mean, that's how important it is. So, and they're taking photos, and they're not sensitive to paying that extra X dollars. They'd rather be in the best space that's available on the market. And we're competing with buildings that, historically were the ones that were sort of the club buildings, whether it's 667 Madison, Siegel Building, GM Building, all of those tenants, all of those buildings are now, we have tenants from those buildings and that have come to us recently. So, some of those are view buildings. So they're giving up a view of Central Park to be in a building that has more of an experience to offer.
Can you talk a little bit about the upper floor conversion at 10 Grand Central?
Sure. So we actually have a penthouse collection, which is 5 floors. We leased one of them. We have a lease out on the second one, and then the others will be together as a group. And one of the floors is our mechanical floors, which has 24 feet ceiling heights. It's really remarkable. And we're putting all the mechanical above that. And then that floor will have 2 terraces. One of the terraces will be made into a solarium, so it could be used throughout the year. So a glass solarium, it could open up all the windows, so you can use it in the summer with the doors open. In the winter, it's heated. And then there'll be a staircase that connects to the lower floors. That's showing this because it's like a spiral, but really dramatic and wood, and it's.
So how much can you say? What's the investment to get that, and what's the rent you think you're going to get?
So the investment is about $8 million, and then the rent, we're marketing it for 140, but we'll probably get something closer to 120. We actually did have a term sheet out for that number pre-COVID, and then the tenant actually didn't materialize when COVID happened. So we just now started to remarket that space. We feel the market is ready for it.
And then, so what's like someone at that level that could be going to some of these like brand new buildings?
Yeah, we compete with One Vanderbilt all the time. We compete with One Vanderbilt all the time. By us. And the difference is, One Vanderbilt's a lovely building, but it's glass and steel, and and it has a certain type of appeal. Has views that are we have great views, but theirs might be better. They're higher up. But what we have is really soul and character and just beautiful design. And so there will be tenants who much prefer that than they would something that's just a little bit more, the way we look at it is like hotels, so some will rather be in a very high-end boutique hotel that's a very truly once in a lifetime type of experience. And one would prefer to be in, a hotel that is across the country, but has very fine finishes and all of that. But it's just, it depends on really what you want. So, we certainly compete with all of the brand new buildings as well. But none of those buildings have the soul that we have. And I think the prospective tenants can see it when they walk into the building.
Well, I'm going to end it there. And thank you very much. Thanks for taking this time to speak with us. And take care. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Same to you. Good talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.